I watched a lot of cartoons as a kid across multiple channels. One of these channels was Toon Disney, which was what Disney XD was before it changed to what it is now in 2009. While there was a good deal to enjoy in the main channel itself, what I enjoyed and cherished the most was the programming block Jetix. It was mostly composed of reruns of licensed programming such as Batman the Animated Series and Digimon in the US. However, there was still a good deal of shows created originally for the block. Some you may remember, including Puka, Yin Yang Yo, and That Robot Monkey Show with a long title. However, there's one worth bringing into the limelight that I recently discovered due to a friend who is a big fan of it. That show is called Oban Star Racers. The show began its life as a short film titled Oban Star Racer, released in 2001 and produced by Sad of the World Productions. This short displayed Seven Eatman Eiffel's ambition for the kind of show he had been wanting to make. It featured several characters from the final show with unrefined designs racing around the setting of Oban. What the short didn't show was Saban's desire to make a different kind of animated show that harkened back to the feelings he had felt when watching anime in the 70s. He felt that Western animation was missing a focus on emotion, fun and narrative, and characters. Following the release of the short, it gained a following amongst both animation fans and the guy working at Bandai. Naturally, the next step was to get it made into a full-blown show. That'll be easy, right?
No!
It took a total of 9 years from the original conception of the series to the finalization of the final episode to get the show made. The creator had to go from studio to studio for funding of his ambition, but there were a slew of conflictions along the way. An example is a company in America wanting to change the gender of the main character Ava from female to male. Thankfully though, negotiations were worked out where Saban would get his show produced. Oban Star Racer got noticed by a guy at Bandai Visual who got Saban connections to one of the production companies, HAL Filmmaker. From there, the show ended up being produced by 4 companies: Sad of the World Productions, HAL Filmmaker, Pumpkin 3D, and TV Tokyo. Sad of the World Productions and Pumpkin were French, while HAL and TV Tokyo were Japanese, making Oban Star Racers an anime made in collaboration with France. It's honestly quite impressive how the show was produced with such a big collaborative effort. Most animated programming has only one team behind the production that does everything, but were the 9 years of production hell worth it? Let's take a look as we start off with the first episodes. We open on a prologue explaining where the Earth has progressed up to where the plot of the series begins.
In the second quarter of the 21st century, the advent of sublight transportation marked the beginning of an unprecedented wave of human expansion. Human explorers discovered new planetary systems and colonized them, traveling further and further into the unknown. In 2057, Earth's most aggressive neighbors, the Krogs, launched a treacherous surprise attack, completely caught off guard. The Earth Coalition put up a desperate defense. Their forces held, and the Krogs were narrowly defeated. Humans have since lived in peace with their neighbors.
We are introduced to our protagonist, Ava Wei, who was stuck in the boarding school without her father, Don Wei, and her mother, Maya, who died in a racing accident. Don't worry, that's not spoilers in the first episode. Her father is a race manager. Due to being busy with that, he has neglected to take time to visit his daughter. Not long into the show, Ava escapes from her school and tracks down Don. When they reunite, it's less than stellar.
What are you doing here, young man?
Do I look like a young man to you?
Unable to face a father who doesn't even recognize her, Ava takes up the name Molly and pretends to be a mechanic for the racing team. But suddenly, the government needs the assistance of Don and his team for something urgent. Earth has been invited to the Great Race of Oban, a competition held by the Avatar. No, not that one. Or that one. They're that guy. Not wanting to be left behind her father again, Ava falls away and ends up being transported to some distant planet along with the rest of the crew. After this point, the show becomes centered around the racing competition, where audiences are introduced to several other characters. On the Earth team, there's the gunner and Ava's eventual racing partner, Jordan, the code mechanic Stan and Koji, and pilot Rick Thunderbolt. Everyone else they're competing against is pretty much bloodthirsty and ready to do anything to win, whether it be cheating or seriously damaging their Star Racer ship. The primary enemy of Earth is the Krogs, mentioned before, who are in the race to win and destroy Earth. However, there's still some who try to keep things fair and square, such as Prince Aika. He's a pretty nice dude who tries his best to be friends with Ava despite pressure from the crowd to do the opposite. The other racers all have variation in their designs and character that makes everyone stand out, from both how they act and look from a visual standpoint. They usually get their own episode where you see them race against Earth, and all the appearances are memorable. Speaking of memorable, let's talk settings. Despite being set far into the future, the environments that the characters race on all feel very organic and like places you'd see on planets with cultures and architecture. It's different from ours. Everything isn't super technologically advanced or futuristic, but it isn't just a carbon copy of an area you'd see on Earth with aliens on it. It gives me Avatar The Last Airbender vibes of how the setting feels so real despite being sometimes fantastical in nature. I didn't expect much out of the characters at first, but I was truly taken away by how attached I got to them. All of the primary cast members had some interesting backstory and development that kept me invested in what would happen between all of them. For the most part, everyone's own arcs are executed well and contribute to the show having a fairly solid plot to follow. One of my personal favorites besides Ava is Prince Aika. He has a love interest for Ava, but there's a nice dynamic between the two, where they remain dedicated to one another through all the times there is a rift between them. For a show made in the 2000s, the CG animation used during the races actually lives up fairly well. Just like Invader Zim, the technique is only used for the movement of non-organic objects or backgrounds, and if it is used on a character, you can barely see it. Though the effect you get sometimes when a 2D animated character has a CGI background behind them tends to look a little bit dated. About halfway into the show, the Great Race of Oban moves into the planet Oban itself, where things get more intense with fiercer competition and the racers having a different moveset. And with that, we get into some of the parts of the show I take issue with. Now, for the most part, I enjoyed a good amount of the writing throughout the series until we get to episode 20, where things get a little bit loopy. We're gonna get into spoiler territory, so if you want to avoid that, skip ahead. Anyway, up to this point, there's been a primary conflict with Ava wanting to win the Great Race of Oban to bring her mother back from the dead, and all of the other racers, and the crowd especially, get in the way of that. But within 6 episodes of the show's conclusion, we get a new one. This is Canaleto, a former Avatar who wants to become an Avatar again for ulterior purposes. We saw little hints of him sprinkled in before, but never got proper context of who he was or what he was doing. Well, what was this amazing plan that we had to wait until the very end of the series to actually get proper development on what it is?
Down inside, you know I speak the truth. Who else would have refused the Avatar's crown? I patiently waited in my cell these many years, for I knew you would come, Eva, to set me free.
You're lying. I wasn't even meant to race.
And yet you did, didn't you?
Rick's crash, it was you. You caused it.
Yes. The human had the potential to win, but far too high an opinion of himself to refuse the Avatar's throne. He had to be removed.
You got rid of Sul too, didn't you?
That wasn't part of my original plan. One must improvise. The fool dared to toy with the course of destiny. My entire plan was in jeopardy.
I've never been free. You controlled everything.
You were free, Eva. The loss of your mother and the desertion of your father created a perfect alchemy, a blazing pain within you. Once in place, I simply waited for this flame to reach Oban and set the entire galaxy ablaze.
My mother, it was you. You made her crash. You made her crash, didn't you?
She had to go to bring out the best in...
So yeah, this guy was the reason Ava's mom died in the first place. Okay, first off, what kind of convoluted plan did you have to have where you absolutely required some random angsty teenage girl from Earth to be your pawn? There's a lot of other ways this plan to get the power of the Avatar could have gone, but apparently, Canaleto just needs one particular girl His plan is pretty dang reliant on luck too. If it wasn't for Aika crashing, Ava wouldn't have been distracted and left when she was about to become the Avatar. You could say, like, oh, Canaletto said he was controlling everything, or whatever, but the show could have done a better job in developing that. You get a hint of something in the first half of the show, but it's never really brought up or developed for several episodes. This aspect of the plot was all planned out, but the creator himself stated that there was more to do with Canaletto and didn't make it into the final show. This resulted in a less than graceful approach to him. However, everything up to this point is still great. The show ends off on a sweet note, and with its ongoing plot concluded properly. I had grown so attached to the characters throughout the course of the series that it felt quite melancholy to see that I had reached the end. It almost makes you wish that they returned to the series for another season or a sequel or spin-off or something. Oban Star Racers is a show worth checking out. If you're looking for a fun, occasionally emotional sci-fi racing show, this is the right choice. Even if you don't like sci-fi things, I'd give it a good recommendation. Some issues come up towards the conclusion, but everything before and even ending off will not be a waste of your time. Thanks for watching.